Three, two, one. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Golan, and this is a piece that I wrote to Lena Dunham. She is the amazing actress that you probably know from the TV show Girls. And if you don't know her, then you need to go watch Girls immediately. It's amazing, and she's such a great actress and human. So I wrote this piece that I'm about to share with you a little over 4 years ago. So I'm 27 now, so this was when I was 23. I never actually sent it in. It was more of a cathartic release for me at the time more than anything else. But I do share this with loved ones, with friends, anyone who I want to understand my journey. And now I'm ready to share it with you. So here it is. Lena, you don't know who I am, but you know my story. You know my struggles. You know my childhood. You don't know me, yet you still know so much about me. When I was 19 years old, my older sister told me that I should start watching Girls because she thought I would love it and because some of the characters reminded her of me. So I started watching the show, but after a few episodes, I couldn't get myself to keep watching. There was something inside of me that was turned off by the openness and honesty being portrayed through the screen. Fast forward 4 years, and here I am, 23 years old, and binge watching all 5 seasons of Girls, even getting my boyfriend to watch it with me. This time around, I was instantly drawn into the show and deeply vested in the characters, especially Hannah's character. Although Hannah and I are very different, I saw many things in her that I see in myself. That need to be honest with others all the time, and the need to divulge any personal information at any moment, regardless of whether it's appropriate in that context. The relentless self-criticism and judgment, the constant anxiety, the tiring ups and downs, that need for constant reassurance, the aggravation over the most minor of events, the overexcitement about little things. And then season 2 came around, and we learned that Hannah had OCD. Everything started to make sense after I learned this. Of course, I related to Hannah so much. And of course, I didn't like the show 4 years ago when I didn't know that I had OCD and was thus put off by seeing things in Hannah that reminded me of myself. Immediately after I learned about Hannah's OCD, I did some research and figured out that her OCD symptoms were based on her own experiences. I read your article, Difficult Girl, in the New Yorker, which all of you should also read, and I cried. I cried for the next 2 days. I cried out of comfort that I wasn't alone, out of happiness that your story was being shared, and out of anger that someone else struggled for so long without a proper diagnosis. You see, I've always been anxious. When I was young, I had horrible tantrums. I couldn't sit still. I hated reading. I hated going out to eat. I hated wearing tight clothes, loud noises. You get it. I hated anything I didn't have control over. My family got so frustrated with my behavior, and I myself didn't know why I behaved the way that I did. So I started seeing a psychiatrist when I was 16, but she always sort of shrugged off my OCD tendencies and called them minor and normal. My main issue, as she stated, was that I had generalized anxiety disorder. Well, no shit. Any person that I've ever talked to for 5 minutes at the time could tell that I have anxiety. When I went off to college, I only had therapy sessions with her when I was on breaks. And for those 4 years, I experimented back and forth with low dosages of SSRIs because my psychiatrist didn't believe medication was the answer. Then came senior year. After going to therapy for 6 years and not getting any better, I realized I had 2 options. I could live the rest of my life being angry and miserable because I was anxious and depressed all of the time. Or I could accept the fact that this is how I was, that this is how I was always going to be, and that I should try my best to focus on the few moments of happiness and joy that I did have because this was as good as it was going to get for me. I chose the second one. And I actually had a great senior year. I had great friends, an amazing boyfriend that I was madly in love with. My plan was working. Ignore the pain and focus on the good. But soon enough, it all started to catch up with me. That summer, I had my first real internship. And I loved this company. I loved what I was doing, but I had to sit all day and I just couldn't do it anymore. My anxiety went off the charts. I was irritable all the time. I started gaining weight. I had stomach problems. I even had to go to the hospital because we didn't know what was wrong with my stomach at the time. I had hit rock bottom. And I couldn't continue to live my life ignoring what was going on. So at first, I convinced myself that I had ADHD, which made a lot of sense at the time because a lot of anxiety-related disorders do have symptoms that overlap. So I went through a very intense neurological evaluation and saw a psychiatrist who put me on Vyvanse. These were the worst 3 days of my life. Never, ever would I ever suggest for someone with super intense anxiety and OCD to go on Vyvanse. But you see, at the time, no one knew that I had OCD because still not one doctor had yet to ask me the proper questions that would lead to my actual diagnosis. After spending endless hours researching therapists and psychiatrists in Chicago, I finally made contact with someone promising. Over Thanksgiving break, I went to go see her, and she diagnosed me with OCD within the first 5 minutes of our hour-long appointment. For the first few weeks, it was like sorting books into a bookshelf. Every tiny event and memory came flowing into my head and categorized in my newly found OCD perspective. Oh, that's why I did this. This all makes so much more sense now. Of course, I reacted in that way. I mean, the list goes on and on. I was so relieved that there was a reason behind why I felt and behaved the way that I did. But then I got angry. I was so fucking angry that I had suffered through this disease for 23 years without anyone diagnosing me. I put all of my trust into my childhood psychiatrist and never questioned her diagnosis because why would I? She was the professional and I was the young girl who had problems, and my parents put all of their trust into my pediatrician, taking his word that if I didn't have any issues in school or socially, then there's nothing wrong with me, despite the numerous amount of times they asked him about my behavior at home. Like, are you fucking kidding me? That is what mental illness is. It's an illness that's going on in your head. And just because someone's high functioning in all other areas of their life does not mean that they're not sick. If your arm was broken, no doctor would look at you and say, well, the other parts of your body are all functioning properly, so nothing's wrong with you. I was angry. I was angry at my doctors. I was angry at my parents for not taking further action, at me for not noticing. I wanted all of those years back that were wasted suffering through OCD. I'm writing you this letter because I don't want anyone else to experience the pain and suffering that we both had to endure. No child should have to ask the question, do I have to do everything myself when it comes to their mental health? OCD and every other mental illness should be treated as just that, an illness. I wanted to thank you for coming out about your diagnosis and for sharing such intimate details of your life with the world. Someday I hope to make as big of an impact in the mental health community as you have. But for now, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for just being you and for giving me the courage to just be me. All the best, M. And I wrote, Lena, if you wish to share my story via Lenny letter or elsewhere, I wish to remain anonymous, which I'm not anymore. Who knows, maybe someone who is unknowingly suffering from OCD will come across this piece and finally start to get the proper treatment. It only takes one person, one letter, one moment to make a difference in someone's life. And that's the letter I wrote. That was 4 years ago. And Since then, I have been through quite the journey in the best way possible. It wasn't always easy, but Lena, I don't know if you would ever know the impact that you had on me unless I made this video and somehow got back to you. And I need you to know. I need someone else to see this and have that same impact that you had on me, to end their suffering. And I got so invested in this concept of helping others through my experience that I quit my corporate job. I was in finance, in mergers and acquisitions, and I pieced out, I left, and I became a health and wellness coach because I have this burning desire to help people reach a baseline they didn't know existed. The baseline that you had gotten to and had shared with the world that I suddenly got a snip of and had this opportunity to reach that baseline myself. And once I got there and realized that life could be this good, I was like, how much better can it be? I didn't know that I could be here. What's next? And so that's when I started to get really invested in my health and wellness journey through food, through movement. And I had remembered my therapist saying to me the first day that I went in to see her for my exposure and response therapy for OCD. And at the end of the session, she said, try and stay away from sugary foods, high processed foods, fat, blah, blah, blah. And I walked out of there being like, I am trying not to touch a freaking doorknob 3 times. Please don't tell me to take away my cookies. And so I actually almost didn't go back to her, but thank God I did. And all of a sudden, my master's year, when all this transformation happened, I had this thought of how much better can it be? And then I started to eat healthier. And as I ate healthier, my mental health improved. And as my mental health improved, I had more energy to work out. And as I worked out, I had more energy and endorphins that made my mental health better. And it all became this one lifestyle, my lifestyle, not a lifestyle that I was trying to adopt and hoped that I just wished that I would love enough to maintain or keep whatever I had adopted. But it was my lifestyle. I finally claimed my personal power. And there are a lot of people involved in the process. It is a self-exploration journey that every person has to embark, whether you struggle with a mental illness or not. And I wanted to say thank you, but because of this, because of your journey, my journey, sharing all of this with the world, I've been able to help so many people reach their new baseline. And I know you'll continue to do the same. So that's it. That's my story. Bye, everyone.